So today, what we will do is to focus on this topic. We have three speakers representing different sectors. And what I would do is use this upcoming 60 minutes to give all of us the required information and be able to discuss on the topics. And thanks for all the participants. We have received over 120 from across Asia, Africa, Europe, and also Australasia area into this area to join us today. And thanks for all of those who registered, as well as providing some questions for us to discuss during today. So without further ado, I'll give a very quick recap of what we're going to talk about, because Singapore has diligently maintained our reputation as one of the top and most efficient air sea hub in the world. And especially through this COVID pandemic time, and now we are emerging from the pandemic, and we're seeing rapid volume and capacity ramp up at the Changi Airport, as well as the container ports of Singapore, and also the cross-border trucking connecting ASEAN neighbors. And many of the users exiting the port, airports, logistic and industrial park and land border are facing growing challenges with their fleets, rotation, and deployment efficiency. And because also at the back of the lacking of manpower and equipment, vehicle availability, so there's a bottleneck and choke points. They're not only affecting immediate stakeholder user, but also impacting road users in the adjacent area across the land. So what we would like to do today is to talk about the current practices and the processes, because a lot of innovative and innovation has been put in place to deal with the challenges and also capture the opportunities. So what we'll do is share today the best practices, and also what we will do is the solution from outside of Singapore. What our speaker today, the business practitioner, would like to seek also the co-creation amongst ourselves, stakeholders, and to work through. So today's speakers, we have a number of very, very experienced practitioner and speakers. So first up, a lady first, is JC Ip. JC is the Vice President Cargo Business at Changi Airport Group. She has tremendous amount of experience in dealing with the continue to help to build with the growth of Changi Airport cargo business and for the user. We also have Mr. Lim Kin Chin. He is the chairman of Singapore Transport Association. I'm going to share Mr. Lim's bio in a minute. We also have Mr. Eddie Singh, who is the director of Sambo Intelligent Technology. So without further ado, I would invite JC to share, because she is the Vice President of Cargo Business Division of Changi Airport. In her current role, JC is responsible for planning, strategy, formation, as well as business development of the airport cargo business. Without further ado, I hand over to JC. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Edward, for the kind introduction. I think first and foremost, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone here is doing well. I would like to first thank CILT for inviting Changi Airport Group to take part in this series of interesting urban logistics webinars. So when Eddie and Edward first approached me regarding today's webinar, I have to give some thoughts, how Changi Airport sharing could be actually relevant for the target audience here, as well as for the series of these webinars. But then I think again, given the very strong linkages and the symbiotic relationship that exists between airports, freight transportation, as well as urban logistics, I could share, some Changi Airport's ongoing initiative, right, that would have an impact on Singapore's urban effectiveness. Now, according to many studies and many research papers, as we know, ports such as airports are actually strategic transportation infrastructure, and is also a radial point for freight transportation, logistics activities, and beyond that, industry and business clustering activities. Now, in the other direction, right, as a city and a country increase their production and consumption, that would naturally drive up industry and business output, that will give rise to freight transportation and urban logistics, and correspondingly, right, also an increase in airport cargo operations. So what this means, right, you actually create a reinforcing loop across these activities. Now let's take a look at the example of Singapore, right? Since this webinar is based in Singapore, if you look east of our country, right, you will observe, how an ecosystem and cluster have over time been developed, capitalized on the Changi Air Cargo Hub. Now, centering on our airport is actually the key air cargo cluster, or what we call the Changi Aviation Park today. Now, Changi Aviation Park comprises of two developments. The first is Changi Air Freight Center, which is owned and operated by Changi Airport. And adjacent to that is the Airport Logistics Park. Now, today, these two developments actually made up a contiguous airport free trade zone. So nearly the global top 25 freight forwarders and 3PLs already have substantial operations in the airport free trade zone. So not only they are leveraging on the free trade zone regime, right, they are also leveraging on the proximity to the air cargo operations to help them perform cargo consolidation as well as deconsolidation activities. Now, surrounding these air cargo clusters are also other industrial parks. I believe some of you are familiar with, the Loyang Industrial Park, Changi North, as well as Changi South industrial parks. Now, notably, the Tampines as well as Pasir Ris Wafer Park development are also becoming very vibrant with semiconductor activities, leveraging on our air cargo operations and proximity to the airport. Now, going forward in the mid-2030s, our Changi Aviation Park, or what we call the key air cargo clusters, will be expanded with the future development of Changi East Industrial Zone, or we call CEIZ for short. Now, when CEIZ opened in the mid-2030s, that will actually increase Changi Airport's cargo handling capacity from today 3 million tons per annum to the future 5.4 million tons. So in the future, Changi Air Freight Center, Airport Logistics Park, and the future CEIZ will then expand it to become a bigger contiguous airport free trade zone. Now, when we look at urban competitiveness, I think accessibility and connectivity to other transportation modes are also important in facilitating seamless multimodal transportation. Over the years, Changi Airport has been working quite closely with PSA to facilitate seamless multimodal transportation that would actually offer more transport options for cargo owners as well as shippers, especially during times of global transportation disruption. So multimodal offer an extra transportation option and solution. Now, airports and air cargo play a very important role in economic development and also a great catalyst of trades, right? As some of us will be very familiar with, the key advantages of air cargo, apart from speed and frequency, it also gave increase in security, service quality, and the opportunity to reduce inventory holding costs because of the speed. Now, today, Changi Airport is the 10th busiest air cargo hub in the world based on international air freight. So last year, we handled a total of 1.85 million tons of air cargo. Even though this 1.85 million tons made up less than 1% of Singapore's non-oil trade by volume, but we actually facilitated more than 35% of Singapore's non-oil trade by value. So as we know, some of the verticals that rely quite heavily on air cargo includes biopharmaceuticals, semiconductors, aerospace, and of course, e-commerce, not forgetting e-commerce. Efficient and effective, air cargo and airport operations is a key success factor for countries and cities to compete globally, as well as to increase our urban competitiveness. However, Changi Airport Hub, like most other global hubs, are facing a similar set of challenges today that might actually impede our sustainable long-term growth as well as development. So what are these set of challenges? That includes manpower shortage, land scarcity, especially in the case of Singapore, rising operating costs, especially right now the world is facing inflationary pressure, as well as increasing customers' demand. I'm sure most of us here, our customers are demanding, higher speed, lower freight costs, as well as higher track and traceability for us logistics players. And above all, there is also increasing pressure on environmental concern, especially for the aviation and air cargo sector. Now, for environmental sustainability is a very important subject for Changi Airport Group. So we have recently committed to zero carbon growth from now till 2030. And we also have aspiration to achieve net zero by 2050. So to this end, we are working very closely with our partners and stakeholders to reduce carbon emission. In tandem, we are also looking at efforts to reduce water as well as waste. Now, just now I mentioned a set of challenges. So over the next couple of slides, I would like to share 3 main initiatives that Changi Airport is embarking on to mitigate some of this risk. Now, in 2020, Changi Airport introduced the Changi Air Cargo Community System, or we say ACCS for short. So what is ACCS? ACCS is actually a data collaboration platform that is underpinned by community-based use cases, right? The aim is to connect different stakeholders along the air cargo value chain so that through digitalization and data collaboration, right, we are able to collectively increase productivity, increase supply chain visibility, and also to optimize capacity. So one of the notable use cases that we have launched under the ambit of Changi ACCS is the truck dock slot booking application. So truck dock slot booking, or we call TDSB for short, is a use case that is actually prioritized by the Singapore air cargo community and is strongly supported by the government. So what does this use case do, right? This use case actually allows strong coordination and collaboration across our cargo handlers, SETs and DINATA, the air freight forwarders, as well as their subcontractors, which are the trucking companies, to work together, right, to even out cargo lodgement and collection at the airport. So by collaborating through data collaboration and through tight coordination, we are then able to optimize resources for everyone, right? Increase land site visibility. So as freight forwarders, for example, you will know when the trucks has arrived at the airport, when is the first piece of cargo ready for collection, and when the trucks are departing the airport. At the same time, to enhance the overall capacity of the airport. Now, as you know, this TDSB application involves so many different shareholders, right? And it also need to involve fundamental changes in each company's processes and their behavior. So for us to embark on this exercise is no easy feat. So what we have done is we actually started with a small pilot group, right? Which I must say that, Eddie is very instrumental towards this pilot group. So we had this pilot group for close to 1 year, where we actually solicit user requirements from them, and through different iteration processes to keep on optimizing the UX and UI of this application. So we have since completed the pilot group, and I'm pleased to share that, by Q1 next year, we hope to roll out TDSB on a community-wide basis for everybody. So what it means is that, in the future, TDSB will be the new and default way of cargo collection as well as lodgement at the airport. Now, the second initiative is on automation. As air cargo volume increases, inevitably manpower resources definitely will increase. But we could not and should not to allow manpower resources to grow in tandem, right? So how we are mitigating and managing manpower resources is through automation. So in the air side, today, Changi Airport, we are trialing autonomous solution, such as autonomous tractor, right, to transport baggage. So the second use case for this trial will be on cargo pallets as well as ULD. At the same time, we are also capitalizing on Internet of Things technology, such as sensors and RFID, to actually track our motorized ground support equipment as well as vehicles in the air side. So that would actually help us to increase visibility of where these assets are boost productivity as well as to improve our cargo handling capabilities. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, the third initiative that the Changi Airport is embarking on is gearing up for EV charging infrastructure. So in the airside again, we have the ambition for all the airside vehicles and equipment to be electric by 2025. In fact, as of today, our airside, about 20% of our airside vehicles are already running on clean energy. Now, we're also getting ready the EV charging infrastructure for our air cargo community for them to transit into electric trucks as well as equipment. In fact, we are very heartened to know that some of our logistics partners, they are already taking delivery of their first battery electric truck for their fleet. Now, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. So earlier on, I have shared 3 initiatives that Changi Airport is embarking on. So I thought I'll end off my presentation with some key learnings and insight that might be useful for the audience here. Now, some of this innovation that we are embarking on, as I have shared earlier on, right, it involves fundamental changes in processes, mindset change, as well as behavior. So change management indeed is very important, right? So it is very critical that, you know, we don't go out with a big bang, but we can actually start small and form coalition of the willing. It's just like, you know, how we have started with a pilot group for the truck dot slot booking application. Second is, it's very important to measure progress, set, you know, KPIs and measure the impact as well, and celebrate small successes, you know, with your community. Most of the technology and companies out there, they are actually looking at a win-win outcome with their customers, and some of them are even willing to take risk with their customers. So it's important to leverage on technology partnerships to foster some of these innovation projects. Last but not least, the Singapore government agencies are there to support Singapore companies. So agencies like WSG, ESG, and CAS, they are ready to have a dialogue with Singapore companies to see how they can actually support us in driving our progress as well as innovation. So with that, I pass on the rest of the time back to you, Edward.
Thank you, Ms. J.C. Ip, Vice President, Changi Airport Cargo Business. What I would do is, thanks, and we'll come back to some more Q&A that you already posted to us about this area. So thanks very clearly from this sharing, the collaboration, all of that very important. So next up, I'm going to invite Mr. Lim Kin Chin, Chairman of Singapore Transport Association. Mr. Lim is a chairman of STA and has been part of STA Council since 2014. And Mr. Lim is also the managing director of Allied Container Group, which has grown to become one of Singapore's largest container yard operator and container haulage. So without further ado, I hand over the time to Mr. Lim so that he's able to share with you the learning and the things that they are doing across in the STA arena. Mr. Lim, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I think a good morning from Singapore. Thank you, Edward. Thank you, CILT, for giving us this opportunity to be here today. As you have heard from JC, this is the challenges that we are facing. I will now go ahead and possibly gives you some idea on what we as a user are facing, the new so-called economy here in Singapore. Now, just now, Jessie has spoke about the air. Now, today, now my side, basically, we talk about the port, the Singapore port. And if you look at it, Singapore may be a small little tiny dot, but we are one of the major logistic hub here in this region. Now, if I'm not wrong, I can say that Singapore is one of the major hubs in the world. I believe we have been appointed as #1 top major logistic hub in the world. Now, we all know that Singapore, although a small dot, we can obtain such reputation because everybody here looks at different things, especially at efficiency and also the technology adoption that just now Jessie has said about the way that we move forward with technology change and the training that we get and the support from the government agencies that you have also heard Jessie has said, right? Now, in the logistic world here in Singapore, although everything seems to be very good, but I'd like today to explain about the challenges that we in Singapore as a transporter, the receiving end of the growing volume in Singapore. And as everybody should know, I guess many of you here would have also possibly transport companies, logistic players. We all know that transportation in this supply chain play a very important role. And here in Singapore, if you look at it, our advantage that we have is basically due to the small area that you have seen from the map that Jessie showed you. The advantages that we have is that we could really maximize our so-called delivery from point A to point B very efficiently, and we could make basically a lot of trips every day. The other reason, as you have seen, the facilities and infrastructure that the country has, we have basically lot of facilities that are very high tech and most possibly had all kind of facility that is available to enable the transporter to do much better. As you have seen also, the collaboration and coordination between all the stakeholders here can be fully maximized and optimized. On top of this, there are challenges. If you go and look at it, because of the infrastructure, we can see that there is a problem that we will face. Now, our infrastructure is very constraining, especially to the transporter. Now, all the warehouses and the factories that we are seeing today has limited loading area. When I say this, I mean the cargo that they can handle is plenty, but the loading and unloading area basically is very limited. Possibly everybody would have probably know that this is possibly due to the owner wanting to have more space to handle cargo. Of course, the cargo, basically space for the cargo is more important compared to the loading area. Now, the second problem that we probably face is the road. Now, the road in Singapore is basically very congested, as what we are trying to look at today, the traffic issue here, the challenges of road not being wide enough because of the small little country that we have, are facing a lot of challenges for the trucker in Singapore. Now, just now, Edward has introduced myself. We are also a container depot, and as similar to all facilities, the container depot in Singapore is very congested. We handle 3.6 million TEU of containers every year in Singapore. And as such, there are limited space for us to develop container depots that are causing a lot of congestion and therefore leading to a lot of waiting time for our transporter. Now, this is just one of the challenges that the trucker is facing. But you look at the problem that the transporter are facing here in Singapore, manpower issue, as what Jessie had also mentioned. We have been facing a lot of problem as more of our youth become more highly educated. There is no younger generation who wants to be a truck driver. Now, the problem also accelerated when we have to depend on foreign drivers, which is limited by our quota system set in the system. Now, even though we have some driver that is existing today, the aging population is also a challenge for all of us. Now, I believe this is a problem that many countries also faces. This is not very particular. But the limited space here that we have due to the facilities and infrastructure limitation, our delivery time is actually very difficult and it's becoming longer and longer. And difficulty in meeting our customer KPI become a big challenge for many transporters. If you look at this, I have shown a picture of what the container transporter does and where they park their trailers. All these basically are due to some constraint that the government policies that they have implemented. Now, if you look at it, our Singapore COE can be as the same price as our truck that we are buying in Singapore. Now, all these are basically used by the government to help to control our road management, to reduce congestion as what we wanted to do, but this has caused some increase in operating costs for all transporters. Now, what you've seen here today, what we are doing as a transporter to overcome such problem. Now, technologies are something that the trucking company are handling, like just now what also Jesse has shown. Without IoT, I believe we will face even more challenges. Now, what you see here is some of the truck that my company is trying to embark on. In Singapore, due to the so-called small land issue, such equipment to be used on the road, it's a big challenge. The government is facing challenges of fighting between the industrial use and the normal traffic that is already congested on the road. Now, we are trying to look at how we can use road train. This is something that the association is working on to try to look at how we can use such equipment to reduce the dependency on more drivers. Now, we also have worked with government and some stakeholders to look at how we can build better data highway for us to do better collaboration. A human-to-human collaboration makes a lot of human mistake. We are all looking at how we can use systems with the support of the government to develop a data highway that can allow all systems to talk to each other. Now, just now, Jesse has also explained to you about the booking system. Yes, we agree. The booking systems is something that we have been working and living with. And that booking system will cause some challenges for trucking company. It is good to have, but it's a big challenge because with time slot, there is always a limitation in terms of a number of slot or number of time that we have on the road or visiting the facilities. Now, we don't disagree that the system is necessary, but it's a challenge for transport company. Now, as just now you have said, we have saw the challenges, but the transporter is not doing nothing. With the limited space that we are looking at how we could share our jobs, our trailers, so that we can optimize our trip. As you can see from the background of this slides, you would see that we are looking at building vertical trailer parking, which is reducing our cost of land due to the restriction of land that we have. Now, the government in Singapore is trying to even out the usage of land. Therefore, heavy vehicle and heavy industry are being redeveloped. As you can see, many things that we are trying to do here, including building multi-story parking, including car sharing facilities, to move away from all this land scarcity problem. Now, after all these challenges and problems that we face, and also what we are doing, we felt that there is still an opportunity for us in Singapore as a transporter. Now, the manpower and the space limitation will give rise to the new development of IT for companies to expand into. Now, if it is important for the trucker here in Singapore to transform themselves, if they continue to be paper-based and not digitalize their operation, they will face more challenges. This is what we are doing now today. As you can see from the screen, we have worked with stakeholders, vendors, to implement systems that can help to develop more digitalization and collect more data to make our transporter more effective. Now, going forward, as what Jessie has also said, the CO2 emission reduction and control is also a big opportunity for companies to embark on. We will go into electrification to make sure that we can support our investors and our people in Singapore. I think this is what I have prepared for all of you. I shall pass this back to Edward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. Thank you. Thank you. It's a very, very insightful sharing on a practitioner, on how you use this opportunity to, at the same time, try to pivot, as well as to ensure that we are able to help our practitioner, the businesses, and everything in the area to show we are capable and we are innovative in working through different things. What I'm going to introduce next one up is Mr. Eddie Singh. Eddie has been a long-time practitioner, friend, and in very different area. He's a director at Sembo Intelligent Technology. This company is to provide supply chain solution in the field of digitization and digitalization. He also served as a board director at the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport Singapore. And let it come with years and years and decades of experience in the supply chain logistic area. So without further ado, I hand over to Eddie immediately. Eddie.
Sorry, I was on
No problem.
Yep, there we go. Let me just quickly head back to my previous slide. Thanks for the introduction, Edward, and very insightful comments from both Jay-Z and Mr. Lim. So I just want to bring us down one notch, and I think when we talk about transportation, everybody immediately thinks passenger transportation, taxis. Even when we talk about going to the airport, we don't typically think cargo, we think passengers, right? So I think it's about time that we get a little bit more understanding of how logistics set us. And I think in some way, as much as we all dislike COVID, I think COVID has highlighted how important logistics and transportation is in our daily lives. So what I'm going to do now is to share a little bit, one notch down and look at when we talk about transportation, most of us think about the road infrastructure, we think about, cars, vehicles, and so on and so forth. But actually, if you think about Singapore, it's quite well documented. We have a much, a far better way of, planning our road and economic infrastructure. But one of the things that I want to highlight, and this is something that I think we need to put a lot of thought into, is looking at how the buildings as well as logistic parks and industrial buildings, industrial parks are being designed in such a way that, it impacts the road transportation. So, for example, when you look at, malls, you look at offices, people who build malls and offices, they only think about one thing, right? Now, how much can I get? How much space I can get? The lettable square footage, right? They just want to earn more money. Likewise, with the logistic parks and industrial buildings, how much plot ratio I get, how much I can build, how big I can build. All that comes down to basically talking about price. But what most people don't think about is looking at, how the buildings themselves, when fully completed, how does that impact the flow? I can give you an example. This was going back to, I think, 1999, and some of you may know this company. If anybody is from Taiwan, you will know Quanta is one of the world's largest manufacturer of a laptop back then. And, first time I visited Quanta in Taipei, they are quite close to the airport. It's a little city called Linkou. Huge factory, right? I mean, Singapore's small. We don't have factories that size. But what really surprised me really was the fact that with such a huge factory churning out laptops, they have all of 6 loading docks. So while they manufacture, they don't think about how am I going to get this out of the factory, right? So you can see that the road leading into the factory is so narrow that 40-foot containers have to reverse back into the dock, right? So we don't think that much about how the building, the design, and so on and so forth, right? They just say, hey, because I have this plot of land, I need to go build a building to maximize my output, right? So I think what we should be looking at is giving more consideration as to, what the logistics require in places like that. So let me give you 2 case in point, right? I mean, you think about unfortunately, some of you may not be from Singapore, but if you've been to Singapore, Orchard Road is probably, the shopping belt. And if you look at the picture at the bottom, Takashimaya or Ngee Ann City is on the right-hand side, and and the other side is a Hilton Hotel. Orchard Link, which is the road right in the center, that faces the loading unloading dock with more than 130 specialty stores. Can you imagine that if every store requires replenishment every 2 or 3 days, that road virtually, and for most drivers, you will agree with me, that road is probably one of the busiest road in Singapore, during the daytime, right? Even right until during the evening. So that's something that we have to look at, that, we need to experience to understand that a building that does not look at traffic flow outside of the building, will have such problems. Now, the other one that we are looking at is East Point Mall. East Point Mall, same thing, 150 over stores, and this doesn't even include, the food court and the food providers. If you just purely look at that, the road is a 2-way single lane traffic, and in this case, the anchor tenant is a very big supermarket chain in Singapore, and with only 6 loading docks in their whole entire property, can you imagine how people make deliveries into these locations? So many trucks are forced to either go over to the apartment blocks, park their vehicle over there, and then make deliveries and run across, which then inconvenience the residents over to the other side. So there are these kinds of what you call considerations when we look at urban logistics. So the other thing that we also start to see is that because of the rental prices, many of these fast food restaurants are actually reducing their footprint. Now, for what we call quick service restaurants, what's the biggest challenge, right? Maintaining a ratio of kitchen versus dining area. So they cannot forego the kitchen because they need to cook. They cannot forego the dining area. So what do they forego? They forego the storage. And when that happens, the frequency of delivery goes up. So if the frequency of delivery goes up, then you expect more deliveries going into a mall. Now, I can tell you with a lot of quick service restaurants, they would love to have a daily replenishment routine. Every major shopping mall will have all these quick service restaurants, whether it is McDonald's, KFC, Burger King, those they replenish every day or every 2 days. So that's a lot of trucks going into malls. Now, assuming that each truck takes an average of 30 minutes, and then of course, with certain malls, they have cutoff times, they have blackout times where you can't make delivery. So those are the kind of things that we have to contend with, in terms of managing deliveries. And of course, Mr. Lim and both JZ mentioned manpower is the other issue. That I will not touch on that, but basically, if you add all that together, it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge managing local transportation here in Singapore. Now, also going back also to the previous slide, if you look at this road here, then the next question is, how much can LTA do? There's only that much space we have, and therefore looking at how we can improve the overall efficiency of local delivery, right? So one of the things that we thought about, that we talk about potential solution, malls should look at having a dedicated space within the mall for logistic handling. Because none of us, today, most of you go shopping center, whether when you walk through the loading dock area, you don't see a very big logistic area where they can stage cargo. So in other countries, places like Japan, where a huge shopping mall has a dedicated logistics drop-off area, that means that trucks can come in, drop off, and leave, right? So that's something that we should look at allowing companies to come in, drop off. The handover, takeover takes place at the loading unloading dock, and then it is left to the mall to then make deliveries to the individual shops, right? I think we did try we did try this once, but it did not go very well because I think, like I say, the infrastructure didn't support. So looking at that, I think it's very important that we look at, having a kind of a mandate, if you would, that for some of you who don't know who URA is, that's the urban authorities in Singapore that does building planning. So URA should mandate and make sure that places have malls, offices have dedicated areas for logistic operation, so that that can free up the loading docks and so on and so forth. Not to forget, we can also look at within a shopping mall itself, and I believe this has already been put in place in some places, automated vehicles. So AGVs could do deliveries, and that moves away from hiring people, right? So looking at that, logistic parks, same thing, in industrial buildings, we should look at having, different entrance and exits. Some places, the older designs, entrance exit is similar, so the flow is not natural. So that's something that we should be looking at, building logistic facilities with sufficient parking and docks, right? So So going back to Mr. Lim's point about VPCs and all that, I think we need to really relook what Singapore can do for the local transportation companies. And then again, buildings have to be designed for throughput. So, case in point, I mentioned in Panta, where you have a huge factory, but then, at the end of the day, you only have 6 docks. You almost always run out of space. And in Singapore, I've been to a 4-story warehouse building, and they only have all of 2 loading docks, and how are you going to move that? So I think those are the key challenges that we face, but not that we don't have solutions. We just need to work with every agency possible in Singapore to make sure that we be able to meet those challenges, right? That's it. Thank you. You're on mute, Edward, I think.
Sorry. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks, JC, Kin Chin, and Eddie for sharing your observation and some of those best practices. We'll use this balance 15 minutes to the Q&A questions that has come up here. So let me try to pull out one of those Q&A question, which is on the chat, which we see. It's how are this, because JC, you talk about some of those, the truck booking system, all kinds of things. If I am one of the truckers, what kind of involvement or contribution I need to do financially and preparation wise so that we're able to make this work, at least to try it out and have the feedback? Because Eddie is one of those early adapters. Maybe you can share with us the experience for the audience on how to get on board.
Okay, should I go first?
Yes, please, lady first.
Okay, thank you for the excellent question. I'm glad that someone is asking about the TDSB. But maybe before also part of addressing these questions, I also wanted to go back to a point that Casey has made earlier on. So Casey, I actually fully agree with you that TDSB is no easy feat, right? Because today running a truck operation is a very challenging job because you need to serve a lot of clients. There is time sensitivities, there is milk runs, right? Then how do you then abide and adhere to a particular slot time? So that is why it was very important for us to start with a pilot group before we actually roll out the TDSB to community-wide, right? We want to hear the user requirements for everybody, not just the cargo handlers, but the cargo agents themselves, as well as the truckers. And even we went down to talk to the drivers themselves. So Eddie would know very well. So we have a customized TDSB along the way to suit the Singapore context, right? So just now I highlighted that data sharing is actually very important, right? So we would need the cargo handlers to share, for example, for imports, right? When the shipment is ready for collection, meaning to say that they have already broken down the shipment, right? And is ready for the agents and the truckers to collect, right? Then as a trucking company, you can actually book a slot in advance, right? For example, if you know that you are coming to the airport tomorrow around in the afternoon, you can start booking a slot. And then when SATS and DINATA has sent the information that your cargo is ready for collection, you can go back to your slot to link to the shipment and adjust the slot, because you do want to come when the shipment is not ready for collection. Then there is a lot of waiting time, right? So therefore, it's very important for this step to link the shipment to the slot that you book. And there is flexibility to adjust. And in the event that, maybe due to traffic jams or certain exigencies, that you might be 15 or 30 minutes late for the slot, our system gives you the flexibility to amend the booking. But of course, that is also subject to the dock availability by SATS and DINATA. But there is a flexibility for you to amend. And how we are working with SATS and DINATA is there will always be a spare dock for emergency. So in the event that you need to catch a particular flight, then just happen that you miss your slot, right? So we will give you that kind, if this is legitimate reasons, we will give you the flexibility to use this buffer dock. Maybe I pass over to Eddie to share your experience during the pilot
thanks,
trial.
Yeah, thanks. No, and I think it's important, right? Why we were so involved in the TDSB is because we see the benefits of working with CAG on this project. Now, what are the main benefits? Visibility, I think, is very important. So not only does the TDSB only looks at the dock booking, it's also connected to the ground handling agents who then have the visibility to the airlines data. So when we connect all these together, the visibility is good for us. It helps us plan better. We know when cargo is coming back. So for us, we work with a partner then that does a milk run within the Changi Air Freight Center. And knowing when your cargo comes in, they themselves can be more efficient. And because they're more efficient, that also leads to lower cost and lower manpower requirements. Imagine if this supplier, this partner of ours are serving 10 different customers, they need a lot more resources to manage all these 10 customers. But with TDSB looking at what comes in per flight, they can plan better. And then at the end of the day, help us be more efficient and also allows us to have that visibility to go back to our customers. So I think that was the attractiveness. And I have to say that, SATS and Dinata, of course, when we started, there were a bit hiccups here and there, but with regular conversations with them, talking to our trucking partner, to JC's point, we even went down to the driver. We got our managers to sit in the cabin and go down and experience themselves, give feedback, and relook the whole thing. And I think it really worked at the end of the day that it did help improve our visibility and our on-time performance.
Thanks, Eddie. I think Kramjit would like to share a comment or two as well.
Yeah, thank you, Edward. I'm glad that JC raised the point reinforced by Eddie about this question of truck slots. I just want to reinforce point, the principles underlying that are very sound in the sense that SATS, almost 2 decades ago, had a company called Aero Logistics. And Aero Logistics was doing exactly the same thing, but for a very narrow scope between the air freight terminals and SATS cargo terminal. But we were solving a different problem. There was massive congestion. And if you just step back and look at every freight forwarder come in with a truck, 2, 3, 4 laborers sitting and load the cargo. And at the other end, waiting at the SATS air freight terminal, where a cargo is not ready, cannot be found. This is the early days, So the documentation is still very paper-based. But with digitalization and slot booking system, all that congestion at the SATS air freight terminal disappeared. Secondly, the time saving, because since you've got a slot, when you come to the SATS air freight terminal, the documentation is ready. It's all digitalized now. The payments are made, all digitalized, and the cargo is ready and waiting. SATS had to change the internal cargo processes to make sure that each time a trucker came, a forwarder came from the air freight center, the cargo was ready. And that meant that the productivity of the labor on board the truck was just as fast. And many a time we saw that even many of them need not have 3 or 4 staff, just one is enough to load and offload. So if you expand this idea as Changi Airport plans to do together with the cargo community, that's a brilliant idea. There are bound to be odd problems here and there, but those are minor problems. On a big picture basis, I am very, very confident that the project will succeed and you'll be able to iron out because the principles are sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Kramjit. I have another question from participants saying to Mr. Lim. And could you highlight what you observed are the pain points now you're facing in the logistic industry, be it yourself and your members, and the insight on how these things are being worked through? I understand you have shared some of those, and practically going forward, and the processes and technology and people, how are you able to integrate all of them to get ourselves through at the same time when we're working with multi-parties? So, Mr. Lim.
Well, thank you for the question. I guess many people, many SME companies are still facing challenges in getting that done. What I believe could help. Basically, we are facing a lot of other issues other than the traffic, the manpower, and all this. Yeah, including digitalization, which is also a process which I believe is important, as I have said earlier, that is the solution for transporter to transform, digitalize their process. This is part of the supply chain requirement. Now, that I also shared earlier that the government has come forward to help to provide a so-called data highway, which is a very important factor to have transporter to leverage coming on board together to work to get every stakeholders to provide the information and data, make it available for everybody, so that just now as what Eddie and JC have been saying, the problem with having to mingle with all the problems, manpower will face big challenges in processing a lot of data. And I think what we do is we have to get digitalized and get the system to talk to each other so that we can then move on together to make this and optimize our operation. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Mr. Lim. Because there's a follow-on question, I try to paraphrase this. It's how easy is it for SME or company to get from your members and observation to get the grants from the government to do this transformation so that they're able to cope with the requirement and make themselves more efficient? That's how I try to paraphrase that question.
Well, the Singapore government has many types of grant and a scheme to help SME company. Now it is available. There are a lot of assistance and help that the government have put through, and including getting the association to step forward to the members to assist them in applying for the grant. But the challenges is not the government, it's not the grant. The challenges is your mindset. You must be ready to transform. You must accept that digitalization is the way forward so that you can move. You want grant, it can be applied and it will help. But you must have the change management mindset ready so that you can move forward.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. Thank you for that. Conti would like to, I think what I would do is to use this balance 2 minutes for each speaker to leave with us one key point you want our audience to take away with. So since we have Mr. Lim, continue on. The one thing you want our audience to take away.
We face challenges every day in our life, not just work, families, friends, but as I wanted to say, as I said just now, is a mindset. For the purpose of this urban logistics, to have it related, basically everybody has to come together, share their data, and have a ready to change and improve mindset in order to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. Very, very, very important advice. Eddie, what would you like our audience to take away?
Well, I mean, urban logistics, the challenges are multifold, but I think, we all have to look at the issue with open mind, and like what Mr. Lim mentioned, you have to take that first step to make things happen, right? So I think that's something, if all of us just sit back and do nothing and just lament and say, oh, I've got this problem, then nothing will happen, right? So I think just like what we did with the CAG, with the TDSB, you have to take the first step. You must say, I want the change and I want to be part of that change.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank
you. JC, what would you like our audience to take away?
Thanks, Edward. I just want to build upon what Casey and Eddie have mentioned. I think we have been talking about Industry 4.0 for many, many years already. So what is Industry 4.0? Essentially is capitalizing on the newest technology and innovation to help you to improve productivity and your business value. Maybe technology has not matured and the cost might be too expensive a few years ago. But right now, some of this technology, the cost has actually come down, and it's really the right time for us to embark on technology to drive our business forward. As I mentioned, the government is here to support Singapore companies to progress, and also talk to your technology providers, because most of them that I talk to, I mean, they are really ready to co-share the risks and co-invest with their customers.
Thank you very much, JC. In the interest of time, I just want to note, firstly, is thank you everyone for staying through this webinar, and thanks for all the insightful sharing from our speakers. On the question, because I've received no less than 50 questions and comments, and likewise also on the chat board, I'm looking at all the chat board and comments. All of your questions, even though might not be answered during this session, our speakers has kindly agreed that they will pen down the response to all those questions. So please look out for those written response of all your questions in the coming week. And one of the participants saying that they would like to review all of that. So also the recording that we have been doing through this webinar will also be uploaded together with the question. So you're able to watch the recording as well as the Q&A answer to all of your questions. Please stay tuned and look out for the same information. What I would like to do is to give everyone a prelude, because also in the question, there are also questions about last mile. That's exactly what our next upcoming webinar in July will be, in distribution and last mile delivery, which is very key to our today's urban logistics and the things that we face on the bottleneck, as well as safety and everything. And the final one will be on the sustainability, safety, because all of these deal with human, people, building, and everything. So that's the thing, and sustainability. So upcoming is last mile and distribution. So I thank everyone for your time. And for those of our CILT members, all of these presentation slides and all that will be uploaded to our CILT members only knowledge archive. So if you are yet to be a member, please visit our website and sign up as a member for CILT. Once again, I thank everyone for your time to stay through this webinar, and the staying rate was very high. And also thanks to our speakers for all their insightful and practical sharing for all of us today. So thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you all in the next webinar in July. So look for this space and the date and time of that, and do register early. Thank you very much and have a great day.